A great deal of unhappiness in life can be due to resentment. And resentment is anger that has lingered long after the incident that gave rise to it. But resentment closes the heart. And when the heart is closed, we can't access the love that is within us. We can't access the joy within us. And so we become bitter and miserable and lonely. And the kind of resentment I'm talking about specifically is the kind brought about in response to being mistreated or disrespected in some way. Most of the resentment that I've carried in my life was because someone had mistreated me. But more than that, they had also never taken accountability. They had never acknowledged their wrongdoing or offered an apology. If someone had sincerely apologized and made amends, I could easily forgive and move on. But it was those incidents where there was no accountability where I really held on to that anger. And in that anger was the desire for them to suffer. But my anger didn't cause them to suffer at all. They often seemed to be totally unaffected by it. And when I would see that they were unaffected, the anger would intensify, as if maybe somehow becoming more angry would cause them to suffer. Maybe I just wasn't feeling angry enough. But eventually I came to realize that my anger was only causing me to suffer. The more that I held on to that anger and the more that it intensified, the more I suffered. There's this saying that holding on to anger is like punishing yourself for someone else's wrongdoing. Whatever wound they seem to have caused in you, it's like picking at the wound rather than tending to it, keeping it open and not allowing it to heal. And so the first step in resolving resentment is just to become aware of what it's doing to you, just to be aware of how much it's causing you to suffer, and to recognize that it isn't anyone else causing you to suffer. Even though there may have been a time when someone treated you poorly, and at that time you may have had every reason to feel angry. If that was in the past and is no longer occurring, then what reason is there to be angry in this moment? What is happening in this moment to cause you to feel angry? There's only the memory of the past. There's only the story of some event from long ago, but it's not the current reality. And part of that story may be that you didn't deserve it, that you were treated unfairly or unjustly. And that may well be true, but there may be nothing at all that you can do about it. Certainly, reliving it over and over again in your head won't change what has already occurred. And neither will your resentment. That wound needs to heal. And maybe what we've been waiting for is the person who caused it to come and heal it. Maybe we're waiting for them to take accountability and to apologize. But that may never happen. And so we have to take the responsibility to tend to our own wounds so that we don't go on suffering. And whatever it is that we feel this person had deprived us of. We have to provide that for ourselves, whatever that was, whether that was respect or kindness or appreciation, acceptance, forgiveness, love, compassion. Whatever they seem to have denied us, we have to provide to ourselves. And this kind of healing can take a long time. It doesn't tend to happen overnight. When I think of some of the people who have mistreated me in my life, and I don't think of them often, it's usually when someone brings up their name in conversation or something else reminds me of them. But in some cases, there may still be a wound there. There may still be some healing to do. And rather than fixate on how their behavior affected me, I take some time to think about what might be behind their behavior. Why do they behave in that way? I like to imagine what they may have been like as a child. To imagine that there must have been a time when they were innocent and sensitive and soft-hearted. And I can't help but wonder what happened to that child. What kind of experience could have transformed them into the selfish, insensitive person that they have become? And in some cases, I might know enough about their childhood to understand. In many cases, there was some kind of trauma, whether from abuse or neglect or abandonment or some other emotional wound. And sometimes I could see that wounded child in them just behind their eyes. I could see the pain, the hurt, the insecurities. And whatever fills us is what tends to spill out of us. A person who is filled with love imparts love upon others, whereas a person who is filled with pain tends to inflict pain upon others. And so I realized that I didn't need to wish them any suffering because they were already suffering. What I needed to do was to wish them healing. And so whenever I would find myself feeling this lingering resentment towards someone who had mistreated me in the past, I would think instead about all the suffering they must have experienced in their life, which has led them to close their heart, causing them to become selfish or insensitive or even cruel. I would imagine what it must be like for them to be carrying all of that pain inside of them. And when I think about their suffering, I feel compassion. And in that compassion, I wish for their healing. And I don't know if those I pray for will ever find the healing that they need. I sincerely hope that they do. And I don't know if my prayers have any power at all to affect those I pray for. But what I do know is that it affects me. I know that when I'm praying for someone, when I'm opening my heart in compassion for them, wishing for their healing rather than wishing them to suffer, the resentment I've been carrying begins to dissolve. And in its absence, there is peace. What I've learned is that the compassion you feel for others is never guaranteed to heal them, but it will heal you.